Welcome back to the channel. I was looking through some video game news and I found an article that was in the New Yorker about Masayuki Uemura. And if you don't know who that is, he is the father of the NES and the Super NES. And after the video game crash in the 80s, I mean, I was playing on the Atari 2600 like most people were back then. Of course, there was the Commodore 64, the Texas Instrument TRS-80. But when the video game crash occurred, and it occurred because the people in charge of gaming really didn't care about the culture of gaming or even their consumers. It was just about rushing out really poor quality software, and the huge supply did not meet the really weak demand at that time, and everything just sort of went away. Nobody thought that video games were ever going to come back again. They were a fad, and the personal computer was going to replace the home console. This article really struck me with just how amazingly talented this person was, and also the luck and the timing that it had to occur for all of this to happen. So I want to go through some of it, talk about it, and I think it's just important to highlight what this person did when it comes to video games. So in a drunken phone conversation, the president of Nintendo in 1981, Hiroshi Yamauchi, told Uemura to go make a video game system, one that can play games on cartridge. And in this article, Uemura says that the president always liked to call him after he had a few drinks, so he didn't think much of it. He said, "Sure thing, boss," and that was it, and hung up. Then earlier the next day, the boss actually said, "That thing we spoke about, you're on that, right?" So he knew that he was serious and he better get to work. Think about the skill level that it would take to engineer a system in just 2 years. That's what it took, 2 years for this system to be created. And there's a reason why I'm showing Donkey Kong here, because essentially it was a miniaturized Donkey Kong machine that was modified to accept cartridges. Think about that for a second. They took an arcade game that played one game. The system, the board, was designed to play one specific game, so they were stuck with that style of graphics and that style of gameplay for the life cycle of a product. And what was really amazing is that that was the strength of the system. It was the simplistic gameplay and the really fun, engaging, simplistic style of those games that made it very popular. So you have that happy accident, and then you have the machine arriving just in time. According to the article, alarmed at the pull that the arcades were having on young people, parents and educators lobbied legislators to pass new laws regulating arcades. And in 1984, Japanese legislators obliged by modifying a long-standing ordinance called the Business Affecting Public Morals Regulation Act, which regulated entry to bars, casinos, and adult shops to include video game arcades as well. And you think about this, anytime that the government gets involved in anything, prohibition, what happened? Alcohol and Al Capone. So when you take something away from people, someone is always going to find a way to get it to them. This was another happy accident. They were banning entry into arcades. So where did kids go to play video games? The only system that launched at that time, the NES. The Famicom decided to debut in the autumn of 1985 in the United States, redesigned in a stylish gray and black box intended to evoke high-tech consumer electronics, and it was rechristened as the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, nobody wanted to touch consoles in the US after the crash. Atari, everyone played on that, and then the video game crash, nobody wanted to touch consoles, and everyone thought that the PC was inevitable. But by 1991, Uemura's Nintendo Entertainment System had become such a ubiquitous presence in American life that when the president of Apple Computer, Michael Spindler, was asked which rival his company feared the most, he answered Nintendo. When you think about trying to create a home video game console after a global crash of that market, and just having the nerve and the courage to do that and to do something well, and everything coming together, not just the talent level of this person and what they did with essentially an arcade machine, turning it into a complete system that can run games on a cartridge, but just, again, all of those happy accidents that had to come together. It's really amazing when you read this article. I'm going to link it in the description below. It's a long article, but if you're into video games and the history of video games and where all this comes from, please give it a read. It's worth it. there's a lot of interesting insight into this. There's even a quote from Steve Jobs when they talk to him about early Atari, and he talks about the idea of the smell of marijuana permeating through the air conditioning system at Atari headquarters in the early 70s. And they talk about Pong and how that led to the Atari VCS. And then, of course, I talked about earlier the crash and just the complete lack of interest in the culture of video games and the consumers, and that's what led to Atari and the video game crash in general. And then for Nintendo to come out, have to name it a Nintendo Entertainment System because video games was something nobody wanted to touch, and just have the faith in the product. It is incredible. Please give this a read. Thanks for watching the video. Think about sharing it out on your favorite social media platform of choice. Maybe subscribe to this channel. At the very least, hit that like button. It'll help me grow. And I'll see you in the next video.